were running a large meetup group on blockchain, and I think you started that when people hardly heard about blockchains.
It was very difficult because back in 16, we spent almost like 12 months talking about what is blockchain again and again and again.
Is financial services the biggest industry that has more use cases for blockchain?
Financial services has always been one of the front-running industries.
etc. Can elections be held on blockchain?
My personal view is that for 2029, we might have an opportunity to
AI taking away jobs from individuals. What's your view?
These are fairly early days. We are yet to see the full potential of AI. We are something that still people who are able to adopt and learn this technology and be comfortable with it, they are the one who would be replacing the others.
When we're talking about agents and agent identity, etc., one word which comes to my mind is Matrix. The movie Matrix.
I think that was well thought through. I mean, I still feel the goosebump when I've seen that movie back in days. It gave me the
Absolutely.
goosebump.
Where will blockchain and AI be in the next 5 to 10 years? Where are we headed to?
Say that anything beyond a couple of years is a prediction that can go for a toss. And I would not rather pick up a time, but I would say that's something that I...
Hello all, I'm Rajiv, and with me is my co-host Raju, and we're thrilled to welcome Ravikant Aggarwal to the podcast today. Ravi is a dynamic leader with deep expertise in Web3, blockchain, and digital identity, and has also founded a blockchain startup. He also has a rich background in strategy and consulting, and I also had an opportunity of working with Ravi in the past. So Ravi bhai, welcome to the show.
Welcome, Ravi. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Rajiv. Hey, Rajiv.
Just starting with some of your background. So if you can briefly walk us through your journey from consulting to becoming deeply involved in Web3 and blockchain, what sparked this transition?
Sure. Yeah, I think I had an opportunity to work with some of the great consulting firms, and have spent almost like 18 plus of my initial part of the career working across business and strategy consulting. So I'd been part of working with TCS, Infosys, Cognizant, especially working on the financial segment side, and JP Morgan, Barclays, HSBCs as my financial clients. I think I've been always keeping an eye in terms of the emerging technologies. What are they, and how can they be useful in order to deliver the kind of work that we have been doing as part of consulting? So back in days when we were talking about how do we have RPA, chatbots, and other technologies optimizing on the solutioning side of it. And that's where sometime in 15, 16, I had a first interaction of knowing Bitcoin. And that happened with a, I would say, very unusual incident to share with you. I was in London and made a to Paris, just a casual family outing. And that's where I lost my wallet. And I was on a foreign land, and you can imagine that if you are with zero money in your pocket, what is the way back home? That is a question that I was left with. And what is the best mechanism to get money instantly remitted back in that time across the globe, right? So that was a question that I was left with. Thankfully, I was able to manage my way back home. But that is the curiosity that led me to Bitcoin as first way of transferring money across the globe instantly. And the curiosity then intensified in order to learn about this technology. And that's where, so I had an opportunity to co-found a blockchain startup. And then I jumped full time into Polygon, which was Matic Network those days. So was having an opportunity in terms of being at the epicenter of the blockchain technology. So I think that was a very, very fascinating journey. And from there on, now in terms of looking across different dimensions within Web3, within digital identity and AI.
So that's amazing, Ravi. One more thing, I think I'm really curious if you can touch on that. I remember when we were working together, we had a chat about it. You were running a large meetup group on blockchain, and I think you started that when people hardly heard about blockchain. So what made you start that? If you can just talk about that, because that is like really fascinating.
I think this was like sharing the learning, I would say. So back connecting to the point, 15, 16, I was in London, and that's where I first got an exposure about this meetup.com and how people come together, share a particular topic, and then there are speakers who throw out some light on those topics. And I used to be the beneficiary, being onto the other side in terms of attending those meetup in London and then learning from that part. So when I came back in 2016 back to India, I started that group in India and was trying to form a community around blockchain and smart contract in India, and that's where the name was Blockchain and Smart Contract Meetup Group. But then it was very difficult because back in 16, we spent almost like 12 months talking about what is blockchain again and again and again. And we were trying to actually find out the people who can give it a different definition, different perspective about what is blockchain, what is smart contract for almost 12 odd months. And that's where the community started growing up, and we had a lot more new faces who were coming and throwing out some ideas, giving different use cases and what's happening in the space. So that was very encouraging. I think happy to share that it reached to one of the top 3 blockchain group in India by the time I closed it before COVID. So it was like 3,200 odd members in Pune like city, which was something.
Are you still running it?
No, I think pre-COVID I shut it down because I was not sure by when we would meet in person in meetup.com.
Yeah. So you said that you were talking about what is blockchain and just really developing that awareness back in 2016. I think we're sitting in 2024, but it will really help our viewers if you can again maybe briefly summarize broadly, right? What is blockchain and Web3? Are they same? Are they different? Just talk us through briefly what is blockchain and Web3 really about.
So I think when it comes to Web3, we predominantly move into a new era of ownership, right? So I think there are various memes out there which can talk about Web3 being only read, Web2 where we have moved from read to write, and Web3 which is where we are saying read, write, and own, right? So I think this is where Web3 is getting more interesting, where we are talking about how can I own my assets? How can I own my ID? How can I own my data? So that kind of ownership is an aspect that we are talking with Web3, and blockchain is a technology that is enabling the vision of Web3, right? And this is where we are talking about if I'm making a transaction with a third party, right? If I'm making a transaction, let's say with you, how can that transaction be done in a more immutable way, in a trustless manner, so that this transaction is still atomic? We really don't need third person, and these assets are also owned by me, but not a third party like my bank or my brokers, right? So this is the premise of Web3 and blockchain, where we are talking about the transaction that can be done across the borders. They can be executed in a trustless manner, and then the assets are owned in I would say, in a self-owned or custodial manner by an individual.
From use cases standpoint, is financial services the biggest industry that has more use cases for blockchain, or there are other industries as well? And what kind of benefits do they get by sort of adopting this new technology?
Yeah, I think financial services has always been one of the front-running industry for various reasons. I think they are the early adopters. So back in the days, I think they were the first one in order to see different types of use cases. Again, because there is a lot of complexity when it comes to some of the transactions that required, multiple brokers or multiple middlemen, and how can that be simplified using blockchain technology? So I would say it has been more squeezed toward financial services in the early days, but now I see that there are many industries who are trying to adopt this technology, bring those kind of experience to various users, whether it is in the entertainment segment, whether it is in the gaming segment. I think healthcare is another interesting one, education, and so on. So I would say that it has now become more of a mix where other industries are also find out what can be done with blockchain technology, and this is where we are seeing adoption across verticals.
Right. You talked about benefits, right? You talked about transparency, and you talked about and various other benefits as well. But do you see any limitations with this technology ever since it started? Have we? I mean, what are still some of the limitations that exist, which still the technology needs to overcome?
I think there are limitations in certain category. I would say, let's say when we talk about these, whether the technology is ready for the kind of adoption that we all see in web space. For example, when we are talking about the existing infrastructure where some of the custodial services and the clearing agencies, they're managing billions of records. How can we have those kind of system which are more scalable, which are more mature, and they can help in terms of handling this kind of volume? I think that could be one way of seeing that the technology has to mature, and we have seen that that kind of an infrastructure solutions have now come up where we can talk about large scale adoption of the technology. But I think that has been one of the concerns. I think there are user experience related challenge. Still, this technology is more techie. I think how can we simplify those user experience challenge in order to take that applications into the hand of, let's say, the young kid or maybe the elderly person.
Yeah, yeah. And Ravi, you have been at the epicenter of Web3 and blockchain, because you have been following it since 2016 and working on it. So although there are limitations, but I'm sure we have come a long way, and industry has really grown. So if you want to touch about what sort of growth in terms of this blockchain technology itself, adoption, infrastructure, etc., you have seen over the years.
Yeah, I think it has started with very, very fundamental or rather basic use cases, I would say, and that is being constrained because first of all, there were constraints from a technology perspective. There were constraints in terms of the developer skill set, in terms, how can you build those mature solution. At the same time, the solution will not exist in its silos, right? It needs to be integrated as well in the larger user flow so that it becomes more seamless. And there was I would say, skepticism in terms of whether the solution is more ready, more mature, whether there are still bugs into this ecosystem which might, not results into any kind of fraudulent activity. So I think those were the concerns that we have seen in the early day. And I would be honest, in terms of the system has matured quite a bit. There are now so many frameworks, there are so many guidelines, there are security protocols and so on in order to make those stable solutions. However, those are the cost of innovations in the early days, where there may be some rug pulls, there may be some hacks, there may be some loss of funds, but I think we have passed quite a bit of it, and there are many systems which are battle tested in order to go for a mainstream adoption.
Sure. And blockchain is also used for stuff like crowdfunding. It is used in things called DeFi, NFT, etc. Because it's so. Are these the use cases, or or maybe you can talk about these also? And are they like emerging use cases as well, just like these?
Yeah, I think if you go back in time, I would say when originally blockchain started exploring, there were several examples and use cases that have taken the front seat. So back in, let's say, 2021-ish, there were DeFi summer. There are so many new protocols that keep jumping into DeFi, and they added that kind of a financial layer for the ecosystem. 2023 was more onto, I would say, NFTs. 2020, later part of 2023 was also having some kind of a DAO flavor, and then we started venturing in terms of the infrastructure scaling by various new L1s that were coming with different approaches. Then we had several roll-up stacks that started coming out, which are also called as L2s, and they sit on top of L1s. And then we have few examples in terms of L3s. This is where the challenges related to scalability, challenges related to the bringing down the cost of transactions. I think those have been addressed, and this overall has been now simplifying what we call as improvement into the user experience side, the maturity of the tech. And this is where we feel that now the infrastructure war is getting over, and we would be getting into more of middleware infrastructure development and application development. So over a period of time now, we would see more consumer application getting created because now we got a more robust infrastructure developed.
Yep.
Thanks, Ravi. You have mentioned a few terms here: DeFi, DAOs, etc., and we may not have time to go through in detail of all of those, but for our viewers, we will put a link into the description if you want to read more about it on those terms.
Right. I think it's very interesting to know how the technology has evolved, and with your involvement in this for a long time, I think it will be also interesting to know what are the different streams that you have either worked on or are currently working in the blockchain Web3 initiatives. I think that will truly bring this discussion into real life for people, and I mean, in terms of understanding what kind of use cases you are tackling right now. Ravi, if you can talk through them as well.
And if I add to that, Ravi, I think I also read that it was also used for COVID test certificate. Maybe that would be interesting for the viewers to know what was that about.
Sure. Yeah. So I think, maybe I would classify this into two segments. My exposure and tenure at Polygon for 3+ years, I think, had a brilliant opportunity in terms of looking at the overall ecosystem from various dimensions. And during those time, there were several verticals that we were addressing. And I would say, in terms of how we have seen the use cases flourishing around having your own avatar in a form of a PFP, and those were the interesting use cases when it comes to NFT, even including how can your ticket be an NFT, and that way you can have the transferability, you can have the uniqueness being brought in. From there on to creation of DAOs for various reasons, including how can you have DAOs for investment or for education needs. Gaming was another very interesting segment where we talked about uh, gaming having a Web3
Sorry, Ravi,
component.
just interrupting you there. DAOs. What are DAOs? If you can briefly touch upon that as well.
Sure. So DAOs are more decentralized autonomous organizations. So imagine that today, if you are running an organization, we need different people holding up certain positions, and they are the ones who take care of certain decisions and governance and approving certain, let's say, proposal. How can we do that in a decentralized way, where it should not be only the set of known people who are coming together, but this can be also set of unknown people, but then they hold certain voting rights, they can vote on certain proposals, and they can take certain decisions, again, in a very decentralized manner. So it is not controlled by just 2 or 4 or 10 people, but it can be controlled by a community, and then community vote on certain proposals, and based on that, certain activities would be taken. So it's an organization that is run autonomously, and that autonomous organization is decentralized or distributed as well. So it's not necessarily, again, controlled by a handful of people. So it goes back into the ethos, right? If you think in terms of the ethos for Web3 or blockchain, how can that be distributed system that can come together? And it is a step away from centralization that we have seen.
Anything that you're doing with the government or the public sector in Web3 or blockchain, Ravi?
So I think there are various areas where public sectors and governments have been taking interest. I believe, especially the use cases which are again very much available in public, where government have been trying to see how can their welfare schemes be more distributed in a fair way, or there are areas where their efficiency can be increased if those solutions are using the distributed technology for their land record purpose, or maybe for the distributions of different types of certificate, right? So Rajiv, back to your question, when you were talking about the COVID certificate, there are various types of other certificates which are distributed by certain authorities, but then how do we ensure that those certificates are not forged, or at the same time those certificates follow a very seamless process of issuance and verifications, right? So I think during the COVID time, I know many of us may have tried this one, where we go and change that negative result to positive or whatever it is, and then change the dates and so on, right? So I think,
Yeah.
especially positive to negative, and then changing the dates and so on, right? I think those were the hacks because of
There
the
were
urgency or
professional
the need.
services available to do that.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I think if you look at it in a lighter way, I think we have been doing in order to optimize on some of the things, because there have been flaw into the process overall. But I think if you look at from a more, I would say, strategic perspective, where government need to try and find out that nobody forges out some important
Right.
document. For example, imagine a caste certificate. Imagine a certificate for service of your lift, right? I think those are very important documents. They can be, I would say, hazardous or impactful in certain services that being availed by an individual. So those certificates should not be forged in some sense or form. And at the same time, the verification should give them a trusted way of assuring that whatever they are looking at it is the right document and it has not been forged. I think those were some of the very interesting use cases from a government standpoint. I believe many government has tried in terms of implementing certain solution, and they have created Lego pieces in order to incrementally build those solutions. And these are front running governments who have implemented this. Some of the governments like in Switzerland, they have issued their postal stamp as NFT and then started selling about it. There were enterprises who have used blockchain technology in the form of supply chain and other interesting use cases. So there have been, I would say, incremental development of this technology, but over a period of time, we have seen that this technology has grown up leaps and bounds in terms of ensuring that this is a trustworthy technology and can bring in a lot of operational efficiency overall.
Question comes to mind, Ravi, since you talked about DAOs and authenticity this brings, etc. It cuts through, deep fakes, etc. Can elections be held on blockchain?
My personal view is that for 2029, we might have an opportunity to remotely vote. And if we are able to remotely vote, those kind of voting mechanism has to be tracked in some shape or form in a ledger which is immutable. And voting has been one of the first and foremost use case from blockchain perspective, because we wanted to ensure that nobody can force those records. And at the same time, some advanced technology like zero knowledge proof can ensure that we are ensuring the user privacy. So I should not be known for the party that I have voted for, and
Yeah.
everyone should only be able to vote it once and so on. So I think this is again a brilliant use case, and there are again many, I would say, experimentation that has happened. I do not have any clear example of any country which has full-fledged moved to this one, but again, there have been various incremental steps that have been taken in order to see that blockchain could be a technology for
Yeah.
voting in future, and I would not be
Yeah.
This,
surprised for
yeah,
29.
it'll be
Yeah.
it'll be so fantastic, because this is one thing, right? So last time when I was in India, so because of certain reason I couldn't be in my constituency on the day of the voting. I was somewhere else, and I desperately wanted to vote because I wanted to participate in the in the biggest election that happened in the world, right? In such a big country with so much population. But like you said, right, this really brings back those memories when I was like, if there's a solution that helps me vote remotely, how wonderful that would be. And now we're speaking about it. I really wish it happens. Your prediction comes true. I think really that's a very strong use case in my view.
Yeah, no, I
Amazing.
think
Amazing.
I'm bullish for it, and that's a maturity of a technology. We have seen certain countries who have taken again incremental steps on that
Yeah,
direction.
yeah.
I think it might start with corporates first, probably using it because they also go for votings, etc. So it might start with those smaller use cases compared to a country going in. But yeah, interesting times, and yeah, I'm sure we'll be tracking as it happens. But now moving on, Ravi, from we talked about blockchain, and now moving on to the convergence of AI and blockchain, because we are seeing a new industry revolution almost in form of AI with the advent of chat GPT back in 2022. So how do you think AI and blockchain will complement each other? Where are the synergies, and are there any overlaps, if at all?
I think that's a talk of the town, and you will see that there are various forum, there are various people who are talking about this topic. I see that both the technologies are quite complementing to each other, and the way I feel is that overall Web3 technology is going to be a bedrock as well as enabler for many future technology to come, right? So if I need to categorize what is that Web3 enables, I believe Web3 enables certain very, very fundamental and foundational things that are required for an adoption of many other technologies. And block AI could be the first one, but I think this same framework could be utilized, let's say, in the future for space technology, for nanotechnology, and many to come. But I think about Web3 as a component where it can enable incentivization, right? How can you onboard first 10,000 users? That kind of an incentive mechanism is enabled by leveraging what we call in Web3 in terms of distribution of tokens, right? That could be a very, very, very interesting way where early projects yet to raise any VC money, but still wanted to onboard those first 10,000 users and build that community. I think that kind of mechanism is something that can be easily powered with Web3 infrastructure. Then I think if we wanted to bring in different minds together in order to build something in a decentralized manner. Again, this is something that can be easily contributed and built using the Web3 technology. That is very powerful in terms of not having a set of brilliant minds sitting just in the experiment room, but exploring out this question and this opportunity of innovation with the like-minded people across the globe, right? And then they can all contribute. They would be incentivized back, or rather they would be able to take their share back in a more trustless manner, using these components of smart contract and distributed ledgers. Moving on from there on, I think if we talk about verifiability of certain things in terms of openness, and then people can go and understand what is that code all about, and ensuring that nobody is able to even modify a single comma of that particular code. Overall governance aspect, I think these are very, very interesting features that Web3 brings to the table, and this can help even to an AI technology to start with, right? So think about it, that only OpenAI rolling out ChatGPT, or we have Google rolling out Gemini. Can there be a model creation in a distributed manner, where bunch of AI experts can come together, create that kind of a model, and that model would be paying back to those developers based upon the type of consumption that happens, right? So these are very powerful, I would say, decentralized way of coming together and building up the solutions, which otherwise would have been very difficult without this kind of a infrastructure that can facilitate how this solution can be rewarding to the people who have contributed. So I think that's from one dimension of how Web3 could help AI. But I think flipping up the question, even AI could benefit the Web3 ecosystem at large. That's what I personally feel, where we need more consumer-facing application to be created. And AI could actually help in terms of creating those kind of a PMF, and bringing in those kind of solutions which can bring onboarding, or which can help in terms of onboarding masses onto the Web3 technology. So AI could also help in terms of new innovative idea to be created in web. So I believe this is kind of a very interesting era, and we can see that this two technology can create more viable use cases as we go along.
Yep. Yep. So again, I think you had a background working in Web3 and blockchain. And I think the other topic that we want to bring your focus to is digital identity, right? So that's again one space we believe you're very passionate about. So how do you see digital identity playing a role in the future of AI, right? What's your view on that?
Sure. Yeah, I think so. At the moment, Polygon ID has spun up into something we call as Privado ID now. It's rebranded to Privado ID. I'm part of the Privado ID team. It brings continuity to what I have been doing in my past, also in the digital identity space, and I feel digital identity is going to be adding that kind of an identity layer, and this is very much required for all the verticals, right? So ID is like payment, which is more like a horizontal, and that would cut across all different verticals. So it becomes like a gatekeeping application, and super fascinated in terms of the identity is not restricted to one particular vertical or one particular technology, but we have seen several implementation of identity in the Web3 space, and then it is also now touching into the AI space across different areas. I just wanted to let everybody think identity not just from a KYC perspective, but there are various dimensions to think about identity, right? So identity is more about accountability, it's more about reputation, and you can think in terms of if a gamer is playing 200 hours of game time, right? How can that be adding into the user gamer reputation? And that gamer reputation could be something which a gamer can go and take it to another game, saying I'm an experienced gamer, and that reputation might help in terms of facilitating this for a beta tester, or maybe rewarding that user for onboarding onto a new game, and so on. So identity should not be just restricted to the KYC angle, but I think there are various dimensions to talk about identity.
Yeah, and just extending that a bit more, I think with the coming of AI, right, there's so much concern about how we can use this technology responsibly, and then there's concerns around deep fakes, right, which is again related to how we protect identities. How does digital ID, and blockchain help address concerns around deep fakes?
Yeah, I think you touch on a very interesting aspect within AI. I would say that within AI, maybe just taking a step back, there are various ways to differentiate these solutions that have been built, right? So I'm very actively talking to several AI project founders, understanding the overall landscape that's going out there. I may categorize it into a few buckets, right? So maybe a set of projects which are talking about creation of data models or rather, I would say, collecting of the data in order to use the AI model training side of it. So that's, let's say, onto the data economy side of it. The second bucket would be onto the compute side, right? So think about for running up this model, we need large infrastructure, we need a lot of compute. Then there are aspects of how can we first of all leverage those compute, or otherwise if you wanted to add an decentralized layer on top of this compute as well, that's the second bucket. The third bucket could be where we are talking about inferences, or maybe the way how this intelligence would be utilized, and that falls into the agentic economy or the AI agents, I would say. That's another vertical. And then within that, we can talk about how generative AI could be another stream of looking at it. So I think if you are only talking about Gen AI precisely, I would say with Gen AI, the opportunity there is that there can be deepfakes, which can be really, it has a potential to create some unrest, right? Imagine that a war picture has been morphed or Photoshop in some way that can send out very, very different message to the community, which can create unrest, especially during the election side. So deepfake can become really serious problem in the coming days. At the moment, I believe what we are seeing is, some Photoshop images of an individual or the stars, but I think it can go really very, very serious in a sooner in a time to come, because AI is getting really intelligence at that. Now, I think how we see is the identity could play a role in there, is where we can say that let's not trust just the content, but trust the source. And this is where, if we are able to map between the outcome to an individual's identity, this could be something that an individual is taking an ownership of a particular content, and based upon an individual's reputation, that content can be trusted, right? So if I'm posting a particular image that is associated to my identifier, I take in responsibility about this content, and this content is again anchored on an immutable ledger that gives an idea that nobody has tempered this particular content. Any content that may not be exactly on this site, on this one, may have some kind of a photoshopping being done or editing being done, and that kind of we call this to be something like a fingerprinting mechanism. But think about this, that instead of trusting on a content, can I map it to the author of this content, and that kind of a source is being mapped to an image or to a video or to a text, and that kind of mechanism is very powerful. This is something that we are also exploring in terms of a context-based unique identifier, we call it. And this is where an individual would hold some reputation. And this reputation can be a negative reputation as well as a positive reputation. So somebody who is consistently doing great work, their positive reputation can keep growing. But if a user is able to dampen or do something which is antisocial or which is not appropriate, the reputation can also be negatively impacted. And this way, we can have a user, I would say there could be a user reputation or user scoring being managed for the individuals or the end users to really follow the content which are coming from the reputed users.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, Ravi, when this Gen AI came, I was like really, really very excited, but I was scared also seeing so much of content being produced, and
Yes, man.
especially when this US election was approaching. And although all of these AI companies, Gen AI companies, be it ChatGPT through their Sora in fact has just came out, but they
Yeah.
were trying to protect it, but still
Yeah.
you'll find a lot of videos coming up. There was this one video which became like really popular, wherein Elon Musk and Donald Trump, they're dancing,
That's it.
right. So doing that break dancing, and it's good. And I mean, everybody knew it's fake, but it was hilarious. But it's okay as long as people know it's hilarious. But imagine if something looks like really very real, it could really swing election results as well. So, and that is when I thought blockchain came to my mind. I like, this is probably the only thing which could, help protect against this. And I'm sure we can talk about that for entire hour. That is like a very, very, very strong use case of blockchain. I'm sure you are doing a lot of work as part of Privado, or I'm sure others are also, but I don't see anything else solving
No, I think
for that
that's a
issue.
That's an opportunity area, but as any other technology, I mean, this is not just with AI, but for any other technology, right? I think people who learn the technology first are the people who wanted to use it for a bad reason, right? I think this has been always a
Yeah.
trend, right? Whenever there is a
Yeah.
new technology comes in, people who try to squeeze
Yeah.
maximum out of it before
Yeah.
the frameworks or the security guidelines and the governance comes on top of it are the ones who would first try to potentially
Yeah.
capitalize on those technology.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
yeah, I think when it is an opportunity for many to get a new business model and start earning in multiples, I think this is also something very serious thing, in order to talk about sensitive topic and morphing it up in order to create
Yeah.
some kind of an unrest.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. And that is why I think even the biggest proponents of AI, like Musk or Altman, they are also talking about regulation, responsible AI, etc. Right now, moving on, Ravi bhai, briefly, if you can touch about, because now we are seeing in AI, we are seeing this agentic AI and agents becoming so much more popular. And I think you wrote a paper about know your agents, the way you know your consumers, know your agents also. So, what is this concept of KYA? Briefly, if you can touch on that.
Sure. So, not a paper, but yeah, I've been writing quite frequently about it on various channels. And the idea is, we are all aware about KYC, which is know your customer, but sooner or later we are getting into a wave where each one of us would have multiple agents. And how do we know each other's agent? And that's where the concept of know your agent is going to come very, very soon. It's already out there, but to become mainstream, I think we need to again try and draw some kind of a framework and some kind of outline around the KYA. And this has to be in a way where it again gives some kind of a verifiable identities to this piece of code, which we are calling as an agent, right? So that we ensure about whether we can trust this agent, whether there is an angle where we identify this agent, and at the same time we are ensured that whatever transactions are being happen, they happen in the same way when we are talking to a human onto the other side. So this is where we started building up solution using Privado idea of what that KYA process would look like. How do we create that kind of an identifier for an agent? So today, let's say as an individual, we all have our national ID, right? In India, we use Aadhaar ID, but otherwise social security number or whatever national identity we all get. Can there be this kind of an identifier for an agent that represents singularity for an agent, right? So how an agent would be first of all identified, and then for using this identifier, can there be more credentials that can be associated to this identifier, so that we know who is a developer of this agent, we know who is the owner of this agent, we know who has given some kind of a legal authority, or maybe created some kind of a fairness certificate for this agent. So these are different type of credentials that potentially AI agent would hold in the coming time. Like we all do hold certain kind of credential for our education, for our employment, for our financials, for our residency proof, and so on. So we would need those kind of credential also being assigned to the agents, so that let's say tomorrow if you go on a portal where you're talking to an agent for an health advice, how would you ensure that this agent is trained to give you an advice which is right? Whether there is a therapist who has trained from a domain perspective, where a developer has used all the right models in order to pass on those kind of messaging to you. At the same time, is there an ownership being taken by some organization when this model has been launched, right? I think those are very
Yeah.
important
Yeah.
aspects, and we are trying to provide a solution around this.
Just for our viewers, I think the article that Ravi is talking about, I and Rajiv, both of us read it. I think it's very, very insightful. So we'll just put the link in the description for the viewers to go and read more details on what Ravi's viewpoints are on agent identity.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll do that. And on one very interesting and ongoing debate, I just want your quick comment. AI taking away jobs from individuals. What's your view?
Yeah, I think I'm sure this question would come up in every other conversation.
Yeah.
I think my view is that these are fairly early days. We are yet to see the full potential of AI. We are still trying to validate some of the outcomes that comes from AI in order to consume that as is. But I think the way, if we draw an analogy back in the days of internet, right? So before, let's say, the full adoption of internet back in the, let's say, late 90s or early 2000, if we wanted to make an online bank transaction, we were a little more, I would say, trying to double sure whether this is a right way to do it, whether we are doing a right, transaction to a right party, and so on. And I think there had been hesitation, even in order to make a purchase of $500 online. Right, we used to go to a shop and make a little more expensive purchases in shop and maybe a lighter weight purchases online, right? Those were the kind of hesitations when we started interacting with internet. But now today, I think you can buy real estate online, right? That is a kind of a comfort that we got it, right? On a similar line, what my personal view is that we would also get acquainted with the AI agents over a period of time. And this might be something that people who are able to adopt and learn this technology and be comfortable with it, they are the one who would be replacing the others who may not be able to learn it that fast, right? So it may not be AI replacing humans, but I would say as the people who have learned AI and they are now more productive would be the ones who would replace the human who have not done it. So I think it is something that, we cannot use a scissor to cut a grass if there is a lawnmower available. I think I would use it that way, that whosoever is more productive and able to go out fast in the space would be the one who would eventually be more successful and take on things faster.
When we're talking about agents and agent identity, etc., the one word which comes to my mind is matrix, the movie Matrix. Okay.
Yeah, no, I
So
think that was well thought through. I mean, I still feel the goosebump when I've seen that movie back in days. It gives me the goosebump, man.
absolutely, yeah.
Now again, coming back to your thought, right? I mean, we as management consultants, right, have been really sort of blown away how much time it saves in terms of, when we sort of do, let's say, some external research or want to quickly sort of synthesize lots of information, right? It really sort of helps us being more productive, quickly summarizes things, synthesizes, and really gives us the time back to focus on more high value work. So yeah, I think, like you said, right, being more comfortable and more at ease with the technology is going to be key, I guess. The other question, again, would be, right, so we work with different kinds of clients, and so do you, right? So what's your view on what are typical challenges these big organizations face when they try to integrate these futuristic technologies, right? Because we know many of the tech stack in these organizations are legacy. So what are typical challenges you see these organizations face when they want to sort of really implement these solutions like Web3 and blockchain and AI?
To be fair with the organization, there are many front running organizations who are at the front run in terms of consuming this technology. They're all trying to set up those experiment room in order to go and try out those technology in the individual capacity and then try and integrate into the mainstream. I think one thing that I feel, being on both sides of the world, right, I have been onto the larger enterprises world as well, in terms of seeing their journey and what it takes in order to bring in a new technology into mainstream versus what is happening in the startup world, where every few weeks your earlier presentation is not relevant and you may have to come up and do something new. So I feel that this is where I would say two things are really important. One is, first of all, the mindset, right? I think the mindset in terms of being more active, being more open, keeping an eye in terms of what it takes for seeing the innovation going in. And I see very, very interestingly, when we participate in several events, there are large financial institutions, large corporates on the floor, on attending such events, trying to meet to the young developers, trying to see where innovation is going on. But that is still a very small sample size. I think being on the table with those kind of young minds in order to see what it takes and what is coming, I think it is one interesting way for the organization to know about the innovation and the technology. And that is what I mean by the mindset change, in terms of being open and receptive of what is the change coming in, and avoid those kind of I would say Kodak movement, and try and be more open of what's coming in. The
Yeah,
second
I
thing is,
get it.
yeah, I think the second thing that I feel is maybe more living about it, right? So not just reading about the technology, not just watching in the YouTube videos, or maybe just listening in, or rather reading of the white paper, but by living, what I mean is trying the hands dirty, right? And I think this is also applicable to some of the thought leaders and individuals in the organization, is spare that, let's say, 500 rupees or 5,000 rupees, or let's say whatever that $100, and go experiment with the technology, right? Go buy an NFT, go make some lending on a DeFi protocol, go play a Web3 game, or maybe just build a small AI agent, or go, I would say, invest into one of the agent token and just try the experiment, try the technologies, see what is coming out, what is that experiment look like. And I think that makes more hands-on, and will appreciate the technology, and that would give us more idea how do we connect that into our own businesses.
Yeah.
Completely, 100% agreed, right? You learn by doing, and experiential learning, they say, is the best form of learning. So yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Yeah.
And Ravi, for aspiring professionals, how should they avoid the Kodak moment? Because if they keep on working on what they're working, they might be facing Kodak moment very soon. So, you know, so what would you tell them? Somebody who really is conscious of this thing, for what is coming and how the world is changing. How should they work in Web3 AI? Any recommendations of how should they go about?
I think the era has changed quite a bit. I mean, if I talk about today's situation, the opportunity to learn, the opportunity to contribute has grown us tremendously. I mean, you really don't need you to step out. In fact, you can do all things just sitting on your chair. Just need an internet and a laptop, and then you are good to go. I think
Exactly.
there
Yeah.
are so
Listen
many.
to this podcast, and that's all you need to do.
Exactly. I mean, look at the kind of things that we are doing, right? You are sitting in a very different time zone. I'm sitting in a very different time zone, but still we
Yeah.
are able to collaborate. We are able to exchange some of our thoughts. Similarly, there are so many online forums. There are so many open communities where an individual, if they wanted to really go into a particular dimension, join those kind of communities, understand what are those community trying to do. There are various opportunity if you are a developer to go look at those open source code based repos, and then you can contribute into those code base. If you are from a business perspective, if you want to look, you can always go and talk to those young startups, share up your domain understanding, your expertise, pass them on. There are various online events, you can listen to them, you can contribute into them, you can present your ideas. So I think the world has fairly open, and there are a lot of opportunity to venture into any of this. And I mean, there's no dearth of opportunities in
So,
the open
so would
community.
you say, unlike 2016 meetup group by Ravi, there's no need to go to physical meetup group. Just join some meetup group online, or there's still value of meeting people,
I mean,
face to face.
both have pros and cons. I would say that human touch
Yeah.
cannot be replaced. That is my personal
Agreed.
feeling. Yeah,
Yes.
and I think how do we make it scalable? That is the way forward, right? So I can attend a
Yeah,
10 p.m.
true.
call without stepping out of my pajamas, and
That's
I
right.
really don't need to spend my entire weekend to travel for 2 hours. But at the same time, for various important events, I think going in those one-on-one meetings and personal events, I think they still make sense. If you have seen some of the popular Web3 events like Token 2049 or DevCon, man, there were like huge number of people attending those events, and still there's a value there.
Yeah, time is a valuable currency, so use it wisely.
All right. I think we are almost reaching towards the end of our discussion. But for this last question, Ravi, I'm going to ask you to take out your crystal ball and do some bold predictions. So, what do you think? Where will blockchain and AI be in the next 5 to 10 years? Where are we headed to?
5 to 10 years, man. I think
It's a long
I
time.
may need multiple crystal ball in order to do that kind of prediction.
Yeah.
I would say that we are in a very accelerated way, right? I think 10 years is a super long time in
I
this.
would say pick your time and pick your prediction.
Yeah, I would say that anything beyond a couple of years is a prediction
Yeah.
that can go for a toss, and I would not rather pick up a time, but I would say that something that I feel personally, we gonna see in a very near term, which is something that how do we get more personalized services? This is where I'm very bullish in terms of AI enabling those kind of personalized services, because they can understand a particular user profile. They can also help us, let's say, connecting some of our private data, whether it is my Gmail, whether it is my Google Drive, in order to understand my personality. It can read through my public tweets, it can read through my LinkedIn post and understand my writing style. combining these two things, maybe with, let's say, my health data to give me, looking at my blood report to give me more personalized recommendation about what my morning jogging schedule should look like and things like that, right? So those kind of hyper personalization opportunities would be very soon available, because you would be able to move away from data analytics to data intelligence. And this is where we would be able to encash on something that each one of us is holding in terms of our data in our private repos as well as public repos, and that can be consumed in order to create those kind of personalized service. And I think that would be super interesting way of seeing how this thing would shape up, bringing in more kind of services. At the same time, I think this would be also enabling into something what we call as an agentic economy. And each one of us would have multiple agents. They are talking to different agents in order to see that whatever laborious work that we are all doing, how can we eliminate those laborious work and this work. But then we at the top of the layer, where we are talking about some kind of an specific task that needs to be done, and then those kind of an agents would be activated in order to get that thing done, whether it is booking a ticket for yourself or maybe planning a holiday. And agents would be able to take care of it, and they would be able to communicate to other agents in order to make this thing happen. But certainly we need to
Very
have a
interesting.
governance here, so don't want to
Very,
touch
very
onto that
interesting.
governance, but that's an important framework.
Right, right.
Extremely
All
interesting.
right. Wow. I think the last 50 minutes just went in a flash. We discussed so many things. I mean, starting from, your journey from management consulting to, transitioning into Web3 and blockchain. We talked about how the industry has evolved. We talked about digital identity. We talked about agent KYAs. We talked about deepfakes. There's so much to cover. And I think towards the end, I think the viewers would really, really sort of appreciate the key insights you provided and what are the things they should focus on if they want to transition into a Web3 or a blockchain sort of a career. I think this was really, really wonderful. I think one of the best conversations that I've had in recent time. It was very, very engaging. I was really, there's a lot of things to sort of learn and take away from this video. And I guess Rajiv would also sort of attest to that.
Yeah,
Thank you,
absolutely.
Ravi. Thank you, Ravi, for your time. It was wonderful. We had a great time and hope you did as well. Thanks for coming to our channel, and to
Thank
all
you
our
so much.
viewers. And to all our viewers, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Stay tuned for more such engaging conversations. And as always, keep learning and stay curious. See you in the next one. Thank you, Ravi.
Thank you for
Ravi.
having me. It was great conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.